Hey guys, there's going to be a lot of black pills in this one, and it's going to be longer, but make sure you listen all the way to the end because I got some hope at the end. But I wanted to address what I see as three merging storms that could definitely lead to some extreme civil unrest, possible balkanization of the country, or a civil war of some sorts. I would hope that the later is something we can avoid, but we don't really know what's coming. But we do see signs. So, to start off, deep political division. Obviously, everyone's seen that. That's been very apparent for a while. The left is pushing further and further left. They're pushing for socialism. They're pushing anti-European ideology, what I'm referring to for now on as Europhobic ideology. They're pushing for degeneration of the culture. We've obviously seen that with Pride Month right now. It is insane how much they're just putting it out in the world. I don't care if you're gay. Just keep your bedroom attire in the bedroom. I'd have the same issue if there were straight people walking down the street wearing BDSM costumes and waving dildos in the air. It's not your sexuality, it's the public display of it. Let's calm that down. Vermont just decided that Medicaid will begin covering gender reassignment for minors, and that a minor can go around the wishes of a parent if need be. Public schools are teaching Europhobic, anti-white ideology to a diverse classroom. European children are taught guilt, while people of color are taught that Europeans are the primary force keeping them from prosperity. Currently, 61.3% of the nation's total is European descent. What happens when the people of color that are taught that Europeans are their enemy become a majority? We already see that if you follow hate crime statistics, that if you break it down per 100,000, whites commit hate crimes at a lower rate than any other group, except for Asians. Unchecked spending. They keep putting us further and further into debt. Conservatives are doing nothing about it. I now am putting out the idea that we call them compromisatives. Compromisatives. Because that's all they do is they compromise. They're like hall monitors. Whoa, guys. Let's slow it down here. Let's slow down the degradation of our country. Let's slow down putting us into debt that will completely cripple our economy. Let's just not go so fast while we do it. You know? Let's keep it under 35 miles an hour. We need a full stop and a reverse. They just want to keep us at a slow speed as the country completely disintegrates. So, compromisatives. Do share the blame for our unchecked spending, definitely. $800 billion military budget for 2018 alone. Why? Why do we have that? Why do we protect all the other nations in the world? Is it for freedom? I don't think it's for freedom. You ask me, it's for Israel. That could be its own video itself. Non-stop wars benefit Israel more than Americans. Do you feel more free since 2001? I certainly don't. Do you feel safer? It feels the same, honestly. Crony capitalism, lobbyists, bankers, politicians that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars when they're paid $175,000 a year? Makes you scratch your head. Bank bailouts. Here's the big one. Unfunded liabilities now top $180 trillion. Where's that money coming from? And when shit hits the fan and that money runs out, and all these people that didn't prepare because they were promised the government would take care of them when they got old, what happens then? Second issue in the storm. Open borders and demographic replacement. Trump will be the last Republican candidate to win a U.S. election. And that's just with current demographic trends. We've accepted the lie that illegal immigration is the problem. And we've ignored legal immigration. Trump was actually heard saying, "We want more immigration than ever before. We just want it legal." No, we want none. Stop it. I'm not alone in this. This is the way most people feel. We can't continue at the rate we're continuing. The 1965 Hart-Celler Act made it so that the majority of our immigration is from the third world. And these people inherently vote for the same things they ran away from, because human nature is to adapt your environment to fit yourself and your needs, not to adapt yourself to fit your environment. That is why these people flee big government, socialist, authoritarian governments. They come here and then they vote for the same thing they ran away from because it's in their nature. It's just how people work. And they call the left the party of science. The majority of third world immigrants use one or more forms of welfare and vote for larger government. And here's the kicker. 80% of all taxes collected are taken from European white males. And the majority of those resources are used by more minority populations. This is why white men are demonized and expected to hold on to feelings of guilt. Keep the cattle feeling guilty. Keep us feeling guilty. So we hand over our resources. Rather than using those resources to invest in our family and our family's future, those resources are stolen from us and then given to minority populations, which increase their birth rates and further the demographic replacement. And the final issue in the storm has nothing to do with demographics, politics, or government. It has to do with the climate. Climate pressures. NASA just released, but this has been talked about for a while now, that we have entered a grand solar minimum. If you've never heard of that, it is a solar cycle that exhibits lower than average activity for decades or centuries. What this causes is lower than average temperatures and wetter weather. Lower temps lead to shorter growing periods, and wetter conditions can actually keep farmers from planting at all. Now, if you look at what has happened so far this planting season, 1/3 of the corn in the United States has not been planted. We're seeing crop failures all over the United States. We will see prices for food rise and food shortages. And this is just starting. It will get worse. The last time this happened, they called it the Little Ice Age. It caused mass starvation events throughout the globe. And glaciers were seen floating as far south as Manhattan. So my conclusion is that these three factors will lead us to extreme civil unrest, a balkanization of the country, or a civil war fought in fourth generation warfare, which is more like the warfare we now see in the Middle East. Now, people on the right, should we be scared of that? I wouldn't say scared, but I'd say cautious. I'd say prepared. We need to be prepared for that. You need to have food storage, water storage. I would definitely recommend that you have guns and ammunition to protect yourself. I'm not calling for violence, but to be able to protect yourself, because if this happens and you are caught unprepared, especially in a city, you could see you could be dead. But we should not despair. Despair is a sin. Because the fact is that the right holds most of the guns. The left ideology has given away their ability to self-preserve and given that to the government. That is their Achilles heel. And people on the right are more prepared. But you need to make sure you're prepared. Another thing I would make sure you know how to do is grow food. Grow food. Learn how to grow even things as simple and as cheap now as potatoes, because they are calorie dense. They take up very little amount of room and they provide a huge amount of calories. These things are important. The majority of the military identifies as right-wing. The majority of the police identify as right-wing. And this will not be the same kind of civil war that we saw fought over states' rights during the Civil War before, that we were told was because of slavery. That's not factual at all. Abraham Lincoln said if he could keep slavery and keep the nation together, he would. But this is something we can win. Now, will the country look the same as it did before? No. Nor should it. Look at where it's gotten us. The founding fathers set up our country a little bit naively. I don't think they realized that the American people would sell away their freedoms for safety, nor did they realize that we would mass import the third world. See, the majority of the world don't hold the same ideals that Americans do, and Europeans do, to a little bit lesser and different extent. We come from a line of people that left the civilized and conquered world and conquered our own. That takes a certain kind of person. But after this happens, there are answers out there. I highly suggest looking into propertarianism. Um, John Mark has some really good info on that. But it is a government system that prevents parasitism, no welfare, none of the things that the left relies on to win votes, and secures those ideals in a way that they cannot be sold away like we sold away our founding fathers' principles. So, prepare for the coming storm. I think all of those signs point towards bad things on the horizon. But if you're prepared, you should be okay. And do not despair, because we can win this.